Welcome to the Smart Dating Academy podcast. I'm Bela Gandhi, the founder of Smart Dating Academy and your host. I started Smart Dating Academy in 2009 because I had this crazy knack of giving people dating advice that actually worked, that I took. I've been married for almost 25 years, and now my company helps people to date smarter and to find love. This podcast is meant to bring more love into your life, no matter where you are and what you do. And we're here to bring more life into your love. Smart daters, welcome back to this week's podcast. I am so excited to have with me my new friend, Dr. Jane Greer, who is going to talk to us about two things that all of us as human beings have probably experienced, whether we know it or not. It's denial and betrayal in relationships. So for those of you who don't know, Dr. Greer is a marriage and family therapist, a psychotherapist, an author, and a radio host. She is amazing. She's been in a million publications nationally and globally. And if I went through them, I would take up an hour of this entire podcast. And her latest book is called Am I Lying to Myself? How to Overcome Denial and See the Truth. So ladies and gents, you can see why I had this beautiful woman on the show. Dr. Greer, welcome to the Smart Dating Academy podcast.
May I say, first and foremost, it is an utmost pleasure to be here with you. You are the loveliest lady. You are absolutely a delight. And I'm so honored and flattered and appreciative to be able to be a participant and share my experience with you and your wonderful audience. So thank you so much for making it happen.
Oh my gosh, we're honored to have you and cannot wait for you to drop your gems of wisdom and knowledge on us. So get us started a little bit. How did you get into this work?
Okay. So let me start with betrayal. I was the one when you were in grade school and junior high school and you had to break up with a boyfriend and you didn't know what to say. You'd come to me and I would write your breakup note and I would have the words to help you navigate getting in and getting out of relationships, what you needed to know to get that guy to flirt with you and what you needed to do to get out of a relationship that you were unhappy in tenderly and not, grand slamming somebody and making them just feel rejected and horrible about themselves. So it just evolved into a natural desire that I was always born with to help somebody make the situation better. And instinctively and intuitively from way back, I had the words. I just knew how to make things better. So I subsequently went to school to gain the skills and the knowledge, the theoretical knowledge, the conceptual understanding, the backdrop for supporting what I innately love to do. So consequently, my doctoral work was on twins and marriage and just being fascinated by the twin relationship, the dynamic of twosomes, how that works. And that subsequently led into my first book, which was Adult Sibling Rivalry.
Ooh.
And adult sibling rivalry is about, as adults, how all our relationships are replications of the past. We know that mothers and fathers, we marry a mother, we marry a father. We know that we marry people similar or get into relationships with a parent trying to make that relationship better. But nobody really pays attention to how powerful the sibling relationship is and how many people marry somebody with the same name as their sister or brother, with the same dynamic of the relationship, trying to get from that sister or brother what they never could get, or if they did have a good relationship, looking to replicate it. I had a patient one time who was single, and he was dating one woman after the next. And first it was a Carol, and then it was a Carol Ann, and then it was Carrie. And then finally I said to him, "Do you have a sister?" And he said, "Yeah, why?" I said, "What's her name, Carol?" He looks at me and goes, "How do you know?" I said, "How do I know?" Carol Ann, Carrie. Every woman he was dating, because without even realizing it, when we date people or get into relationships, we have a natural unconscious, immediate knee-jerk reaction. We have a default. And so somebody has the same name as your sister or brother, there's a natural comfortability without even realizing it that you fall into, which is not always good. Because if you did not have a good relationship with a sister or brother and you suddenly are in a new relationship, you've launched a relationship with a new, Joe, and you want him to be what you never had with your brother, welcome denial. Denial, the crux of it is people get locked into wishing and hoping. They get locked into wishing and hoping that this person will be who they want them to be. When they're disappointed and they're not, they continue to buy into the fantasy that this person will change. Additionally, when the person says to them, that's ridiculous. I didn't do that. I'm not seeing anybody else. I only want to be with you. We believe what we're told. We want to believe what we're told.
Right.
And that's because we want to trust that person. Here comes the trust factor. We want to trust that person. We say, well, I'm trustworthy. So will he be. So will she be. And we say, I got to give somebody the benefit of the doubt. All right, just because this is not adding up this time, it's one time, and there are all these other times, so it'll add up. And our desire to trust, because when we trust, we feel safe, we feel protected, and we feel that the person has our back, that they will look out for us and they have our back. So we go with our blind trust. Somebody tells you you can trust me. You want to trust them. You want to believe. And you start to believe the words, not the behavior. And the core of trust and blind trust is when you go with what you hear and not what you see. And the essence of trust is what you say aligns and connects with what you do. What you see and what you get have to be in sync with what you are told. And the first blip when somebody says, for example, these are small things, but with many of the single women that I work with, I've taught them the watch out signs is what I call them in my book. Watch out. That the guy says, all right, I'll meet you at 7:00, and he's there at 7:45, or he's picking you up and he hasn't made a reservation anywhere. These seem like small things, but it shows planning, it shows intention, it shows honoring one's word. They're all little details, but they turn into, when repeated over and over, really problematic behaviors that lead to disappointment and ultimately will lead to and can lead to betrayal. So the notion that we just have to trust people because we meet them and we like them and they tell us that they can be trusted, that's blind trust. And once you're in that knee deep, you are wide open. It's like putting yourself in the middle of the street and saying, all right, come on, hit me, truck. You're wide open to being run over because you have the most important ingredient of trust is learning to trust yourself. And it's really hard because our wishes clash with our judgment. And people tell me all the time, I knew, in my gut, I knew. Yeah, in your gut, you knew. But trusting your gut meant you had to deal with reality. And fantasy is so much more pleasant than reality. It's so much nicer when you hold on and stay in the fantasy. So,
and let me ask you this. Why do we go into denial when we hear the white lies, the fibs, the yellow flags? Why do we want to sweep those under the rug? Is it what we were acculturated Two, through families of origin, with our parents, maybe with our siblings. Is it this desire to want the fantasy to be true? So I'm going to sweep those little red flags under the rug. Why do we do this to ourselves?
Great question. And you're exactly on point. A lot of times we've survived our childhood and the abandonments and traumas and grievances and wounds and hurts and pains of family life by denying how bad it is. We don't see it. You know, the most vivid example I ever had of denial was a young child. He was physically abused by his parents in the bedroom, horrifically abused. And then he was doing a Rorschach test, and they showed him a picture of the bedroom, and they said, "Tell us everything you see in this room." And he said, "The only thing I see there is a light," because he blocked out the entire room to survive the physical abuse. Well, we block out everything that creates and causes us emotional pain. It doesn't have to be physical, it's emotional. And when it's so painful and we see it, if we really accept it, you have to be prepared to just completely pull the rug out from under yourself and uproot your life. Because if you do acknowledge, you know what, he's cheating. He hasn't come home. I saw it on his phone. You can't fool me anymore. Then you have to confront it, end the relationship. And do you know how many people will confront a partner or lover and say, "I have the proof, I have this, I have that." And the partner will say, "No." I have heard, Bella, more outrageous, preposterous lies to disguise and cover up infidelity that the person being cheated on ultimately will accept, because it's too painful not to. You have children, you're married 15 years, you've pulled your money, you've got a business together, you're living together, you're going to take that next trip. If you accept that there's infidelity going on, you got to deal with it.
Yeah.
And so sometimes the reality and dealing with it seems much more, and is only initially, more unpleasant than staying rooted in the fantasy and the denial. So that's why denial takes such hold and it's intractable. It's so hard to see people for who they are, not for who you want them to be.
Right.
And everybody holds on to who you want that person to be. And of course, when they stoke the fire and continue to tell you, "I will be that person," and live on being who they are, it's pretty hard to pull yourself out of it. That's why I wrote the book.
You know? I love that. And your work is so aligned, Dr. Greer, with what we do at Smart Dating Academy. I mean, we have a whole protocol for how we coach people to get into relationships, how we have a dating funnel in the beginning. We help them reconstitute a partner that is green flag and makes them happy. We teach them all about the red flags that are going to come up from the time you read somebody's profile all the way to 6 months of exclusivity. And then having them date slowly. We have graphs and dating scorecards where they write everything down.
Fabulous.
Immediately after the date, to your point. So I always say, so our sweet brains can't greenwash the red flags. No denial. Write it down immediately, because my coaching is going to be as good as the inputs. And if you're greenwashing a red flag, I'm not a magician. And so this is how we've been successful, really day by day, watching people and essentially protecting us from ourselves. I always say we wrap you up in pink sparkly bubble wrap to take you through this process by the hand, slowly and steadily, so that, and to your point, when we hear people's relationship history all the time, and I'll always ask them, "Gosh, that's awful. When did you see the red flags in this?" Every single time they will say, "Oh, I saw it early on." I saw it right away.
Exactly that. I have one of my books is The Courage to Change, The Courage to Move On in Love, Work, and Life. And I have an example of a woman that I worked with many years back, and she said to the guy on the first date, I know what your problem is, and I'm not going to fix it. Well, hello. 6 years it took us to dig her out from that relationship. And the reason being, this guy had the same name as her brother. There were the same issues at play. And she was working through and working out that relationship, trying to rehab her brother. By the time they got to the 11th hour where the relationship was on the brink of ending, she was paying for him. He was living there. She was doing the laundry, the cooking. And this was a top TV producer with a hugely busy life, an active, extremely successful young woman, and yet was doing the lion's share and carrying the bulk of the relationship for a man who was utterly, completely dependent and helpless, just like a brother. So your red flags are what I call the watch out signs. And, I have a funny story. A friend of mine is a comedian. She had gotten divorced and she was about to date. And she said to me, what should I look out for on a date? So I said, okay, this is a small thing, but if he reaches across the table and helps himself to your food without asking, and doesn't then offer you a bite, be careful, because there's a lack of boundaries, there's an entitlement, there's a notion of, I'll have what you're having and share, but I'm not sharing what I have. And sure enough, he did this. And she said she couldn't believe it. And I said to her, well, be prepared. Well, 3 weeks later, he was trying to talk her into managing her career, firing her agent, let me manage your career. And she saw it then, but it took her 3 weeks of this, and it was right there at the beginning. And ironically, one of the friends, the old friends with Joey, they actually did a skit where he's out on a date, and he likes the girl really a lot, but she keeps eating his French fries. So he complains to Monica or Rachel, and they say, oh, well, that's easy. Order French fries for her. He said, yeah, that's a great idea. So they go out again. He gets 2 orders of French fries, and she leans over and helps herself to his hamburger. So,
oh my gosh, that's
but
funny.
it's a small sign. It's a small detail, but I'm telling you, it is indicative of sharing, entitlement, what one expects. Just I can help myself. And many of the women who paid attention have then layered it with other details that they've noticed as well. You know what? This guy hasn't asked me a single thing about me. Or everything I tell him, he doesn't relate and then share and say, that's really something I understand because I had something similar happen. He just goes, yeah, me too, and goes into what he went through without any acknowledgement or response to the story that I just shared. So then it's a breadcrumb trail. They start to see that all these tiny little behaviors add up to a personality whereby people are going to be, another one of my books, selfish. What about me? They're going to be selfish. They're going to be thinking about themselves. They're not going to be thinking about you. And it's you who've got to start to think about you. What about me? So.
Wow, so interesting. Like these little, you almost call them like microaggressions, watch outs, red flags. Like if you're attuned to them,
exactly,
you'll see them. And ladies and gentlemen, if you find yourself listening to this going, oh, wow, I'm not attuned to them, ask yourself why.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Ask yourself
Why? Why
Why?
am I doing this? Why have I done this? What was I trying to do? Was it because the thought of being single was dreadful? The thought of being on the dating apps was dreadful. What caused you to do that? And that's your first step at actually recovering, getting better, getting out of this, because we can say, yeah, well, I always see the red flags, but I jump in anyway. You have to do a little bit of introspection.
Well, you have to be ready to recognize the fear and anxiety and insecurity that you might be dealing with internally, that, well, I won't meet anybody else, or this guy really seems to like me, or he seems really cute and he's got some money. One of my favorite stories, one of the gals that I work with, and we went over, the watch out signs. So she's standing in front of a pet store and she's looking at the dogs, the puppies. And this really cute guy comes along and they're talking, and then he says to her, well, I would never get a dog. And she said, why not? He said, well, I wouldn't make a 7-year commitment. And I said to her, she realized it, and she said, and I realized then, he can't commit to 7 years. How can he commit to a relationship? And sure enough, he asked her out, and she said, well, I'll give him a chance. And what did he do? He never showed up.
He blew it.
But she knew it. And fortunately, this was just one time, and it was not, repeated disappointment. But, it's really, it's hard when you feel like the woman you were talking about. How do I bring these people in? It's not that you're bringing them in. It's that you're not editing them out. You're not seeing what you need to see initially so that you can say no, and have faith and trust that if you can catch fish, if you can catch barracudas, you can catch goldfish. If you know how to fish and put your rod in the water and stick a worm on the pole, you're going to catch fish. Just change stream. Go to a different pool, so that you're looking and having the different expectations to catch a fish, if you will.
Oh, yes, you could. I love that. So well said. And
thank you.
And denial can lead to betrayal. Let's talk about that. When we're ignoring what's in front of us, when we're not watching the alignment of words and actions, is that when we open ourselves up?
Totally and completely. When you lock into the wishing and hoping, believing what you're told. Oh, and another element with denial, and this is really an important one, you take a little and turn it into a lot, and you take a lot and turn it into a little. So, for example, if they give you a little affection or they show up one time, suddenly they're reliable and dependable. Suddenly they're affectionate. If they disappoint you and lie and hurt you, you take a lot of the disappointment and you say, it's not so bad. It won't happen again. It was just the last time. You minimize it. So by making it less than it was and making it more than it is, you stay hooked in hope and hooked in fantasy. And when you're living in the fantasy, you are really vulnerable to getting mowed down by reality at some point, because most people, their gut keeps going and going, or the person is dealing with their own guilt, so they're going to inevitably step up, misstep, wind up being revealed. It's hard to maintain duplicity for a very long time. And when that happens and it's in your face, people are in shock. I knew it, but I couldn't believe it. You're dumbstruck. And the betrayal is devastating. There is no other word for it, because you're your world, your faith in the other person, your sense of security, stability, safety is shattered. Your sense of self-esteem, self-worth is shattered. There's such a rejection that goes along. And there are many kinds of betrayals. There's not just romantic. There's friendship betrayals. I just had one of my patients was saying, she had this friend and she finally said this and this and this and this and this. I can't be friends with her anymore. And I said, because you're feeling betrayed. She goes, yes, exactly. Betrayal happens in many different arenas of relationship. And there are the betrayals where somebody just says, I couldn't help myself. They know what they're doing. They know they're betraying you, but they do it for their own gain. They can't help it.
They can't help it.
Then they can't help it. Then there are the unaware betrayals. They don't realize they're betraying you. They don't realize you're going to be hurt or take it personally, and it's not their intention. And then there are the aware betrayals. They know what they're doing, and they don't care. They justify their behavior. There's a certain self-righteousness that goes along with it. They're angry, or they feel entitled, or they're upset with you because of what you did, and so they betray. And coming back from betrayal, if you don't do the work, you will continue to get betrayed. If you don't rebuild your own trust in your judgment and trust in yourself and learn how to trust people, what to base your trust on, what to look for. If you don't do that, you're going to continue to stay in blind trust and get betrayed.
How do we do that, Dr. Greer?
Well, read my book.
You know? The book will be in the show notes, ladies and gentlemen.
Because I really try to map out how to come back from betrayal. But it starts with, if you're in a relationship with somebody who has betrayed you, an apology is the first step. It is the beginning. It is not the end. And for many people, if they're, especially with cheating and infidelity, the cheater will say, well, I said I was sorry. And that is not.
It's not enough.
It's not enough at all. First of all, I did a show, and one of the guys said to me, Dr. Greer, how long do I have to keep apologizing? And I said, you have to keep apologizing for as long as your partner is in pain and needs to hear you say, I'm sorry.
Amen.
And that's how long you've got to apologize. And the problem is, Bella, people who cheat, they don't want to keep apologizing because then they feel like terrible people. Every time they have to say they're sorry, they're owning that they did something bad and hurtful, and they want to forget it. And every person I've ever had in my office, male or female, who has cheated, has begun the session by way of saying, I'm a good person, but I'm a good person, and they are. But there are all these undercurrents and dynamics at play that compelled and propelled them to be unfaithful and cheat. So they have to now be willing to take responsibility for that, ownership of it, and a willingness to do the repair work in the relationship, which means, and here's the irony. So when there's cheating going on, everything is hidden, everything is secret. But when there's repairing and healing, everything has to be open, above board, and public, if you will. So hidden phones and computers and messages, all of that has to be open to your partner. Where you're going, nothing can be concealed, because you have to prove that you're trustworthy. And seeing is believing. And so over time, if somebody is willing to do the healing work, the ownership, the responsibility, the empathizing, I'm so sorry for the pain that I caused you, I'm going to work at being a better partner, that can heal the relationship as well. Now, here's the tricky part with infidelity and betrayals. Very often, when somebody cheats, if it's not a sexual addiction and, somebody who's just out and out, to be in a sexual liaison, there's a lot of unhappiness in the relationship. And a lot of times that person's needs, man or woman, doesn't matter, they've gone unheard, unmet, and they feel rejected. They feel abandoned. They feel alone. They feel empty in the relationship, be it a sexual need that's not being met, be it an emotional need that's not being met. And so they become vulnerable to somebody paying attention to them.
Pouring into their cup.
Well said, exactly. That suddenly they feel attractive, or they feel important, or they feel heard, or they feel seen. And those are the roots of infidelity. And so the person who cheats doesn't get to complain, or I don't even want to use the word complain, to address their deficit, their disappointment, their deprivation, what led them to cheat, until they've done the healing work with their partner. Because their partner is so demolished that there's no way they're going to hear why they did it. When somebody steps on your foot, you don't care why. All you want is, ow, and I'm sorry. I don't care that you didn't see me. Ouch. Just relate to the pain.
Just be like, I am so sorry. That must hurt. Can
Exactly.
I get some ice?
Exactly. The empathy, the caring. That's all people want, which is the title of my book, How Could You Do This to Me? How could you do this to me? And I actually used the title because when my first book was out, I was doing a lot of different TV shows, and it didn't really matter what the topic was. Mothers and daughters clashing, infidelity, sons and, fathers, you name it, 100 different topics in television. But ultimately, every one led to somebody saying, how could you do this to me? And I said, you know what, that's really what we're dealing with. So thus the title.
Oh, gosh, I love that. Well, this has been so informative. I feel like I'm better for having met you, and you put really good frameworks around things with great words. And I'm so delighted that you joined us today. Are there any last gems or tips you want to leave for our dear listeners that I didn't ask?
You've pretty much covered everything. I would just encourage everybody listening to trust yourself and have faith in yourself and have courage in yourself. I mean, I could take every title of every book, The Courage to Move On in Love, Work, and Life. Have the courage. Have the faith in yourself. Know that you can not just survive, but you can thrive. And you do not have to stay stuck in a relationship that is painful and torturous and, depriving. It's a big world. There's a lot of opportunity, but you've got to give yourself the opportunity. You cannot win the lottery if you don't buy a ticket. You got to put yourself out there. You really do. And you will survive, and you will really give yourself the chance to have more.
Great way to wrap it up. So, Smart Daters, thank you for being with us and for giving us your time. If you're new to this podcast, welcome. I hope this episode blew your socks off. You can think about yourself and what am I accepting? Have I denied things? Do I blind trust or do I real trust? Do I ignore red flags? Have I been betrayed? Really think about this and take stock in yourself, and remember, you're not doomed to stand where you are for the rest of your life. If you need help, there's so much help out there. buy Dr. Greer's book, set up a session with us at Smart Dating Academy. There are so many resources out there to help you. And if I can leave you with one thing, you are worth it. You are worth all of it. So until our next episode, thank you for joining us and have a beautiful betrayal-free week.
Touche. Thank you for having me. You're terrific. You're absolutely terrific.
Thank you for being here.